next panel discussion is unraveling the OEM-Dealer relationship for mutual growth. And let's please welcome all our esteemed panelists with a big round of applause. May I have on stage Mr. Janeshwar Sen, Senior Vice President, Sales and Marketing, Honda Cars India. May I also invite on stage Mr. Arun Malhotra, MD, Nissan India. Also, can I have Mr. Umang Kumar, CEO and founder of Gaadi.com. Mr. Kavan Mukhtiar, partner, PricewaterhouseCoopers. And may I also invite Mr. Nikunj Sanghi on stage, MD, JS4 Wheel Motors, to kindly come here. So Nikunj, it's over to you now. I'd request you to moderate the session for us. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, thanks to ET Auto Forum and Nabil to have us all here. The genesis of the dealer-OEM relationship was soared in the last session that we had. And I think almost every speaker talked about the dealer-OEM relationship. And why not? Because I think this entire business of auto retail is woven around a dealer-OEM relationship. In spite of, or I would say with the onslaught of e-commerce and various other platforms which are eyeing for space. But I really don't know if dealer-OEM relationship is an issue because we are both on the same side. We both want customers, we both engaging with customers, and we are all for profitability. We are all for lifetime value of customers. So are we on two sides of the table or are we on the same side of the table? So I think taking a cue from this, I would first request you, Kavya, because coming from PwC, I think he will have an international perspective, a global perspective to dealer-OEM relationship.
Thank you very much, Nikunj. So firstly, thank you ET Auto and Nabil for giving PwC a chance to be a partner in this event. Let me first begin by talking about the OEM view of things. Very clearly, while the market is growing, the intensity of competition is also very, very ferocious, I would say. And in this context, companies that really offer a better customer experience are really going to make it to the next level and are going to win market share. Ultimately, the delivery channel is through the dealer. So if you are in a situation where dealers are not financially healthy or believe that investing in this brand or in this business is going to give you suboptimal returns, then finally the customer experience will suffer. So I think the key point that one needs to keep in mind from an OEM standpoint as well is that clearly for them to be competitive and grow long term, we have to start thinking as equal partners. The traditional thinking clearly was that we are the principal, we tell you what to do, you go ahead and do it. But I think the way forward, and this is a trend we see globally, is that these are partners in growth. And yeah, of course, we all want to be politically right and say good things about each other. But reality is when I meet with dealers as well as when I meet with OEMs, there are conflicting situations. OEMs say, oh, my customer service levels are not good. Dealers don't invest enough in the infrastructure. The quality of talent at the dealership, very high levels of attrition. So there are a lot of fundamental issues which are impacting the customer experience because of various factors. From an OEM view, clearly, there are questions regarding the way business is being done. Common question is, are they really focusing on this business or this is just one of the 10 businesses that they have? Are they taking money from this business and investing in real estate, for example? Or are they really long-term players in this space? So these are views typically that we hear from the OEM side. The other clear issue is, oh, I got the financials, but is it the real financials? I mean, let's bring real issues on the table, Is it really the financial performance of the dealership, or is this what is really stated for the tax guys? So I think the key issue is, while both, to grow and grow in a very symbiotic way, I think both sides have to really open up their thinking. There is a huge opportunity in the Indian market. Dealers have to stop thinking just margins. Oh, I frequently hear that we make like 1 or 2% margin in the new vehicle business. Of course, service business is a little bit better. To thinking about it more from a return on investment standpoint, or return on capital employed standpoint. That really is a better measurement. So you may have lower margins, but if your throughput on vehicle sales is very high, then you can still make higher return on capital invested. And let me tell you, this is clearly a space where it's not just about margins. If you are organized well, and if you have the ability to put together a management team in place, you are in a space which is very interesting for the private equity as well as the venture capitalists. And many of the companies that you see who are in the dealership business eventually will also get listed on the stock market. So getting access to the right capital, putting the right kind of best-in-class systems and processes in place, and doing business with full integrity and transparency are some of the issues that one would definitely have to deal with. So what I tried to do is sort of bring out some of the key issues from both sides. And I think clearly there is disruptive trends happening in the marketplace, especially from technology players. But there is no question mark on the requirement for a dealership. I don't really see customers buying cars like on a Flipkart kind of an environment directly from the OEMs through a e-commerce channel. Simply because this is a very involved purchase decision. There are service related aspects involved, warranty related aspects involved. So the likes of online opportunity is really something that all the dealers should look at as well. Why does it have to be only a startup? Or you can also look at maybe investing in startups and learn through this whole process. So I think those are some of the key points that I would like to bring to the table.
Thank you, Kavya, and I think you brought in some extremely key points from both the dealer perspective and the principal perspective. My next question would go to Mr. Janeshwar Sen, and I think one of the things that Kavya talked about was growth of dealerships, and growing to an extent where a PE partner would be interested in investing into a dealership. Now, we are often as dealers debating between what is the optimal size of a dealership and what happens to our growth aspirations, because largely it is found that after you reach a critical mass in terms of volume of business, the manufacturer is always looking for adding on a channel partner. And so your growth is limited to a size, and that size is determined by an OEM and not so much to do with your growth aspirations. Your views on this, sir?
Scale is achieved only by having a bigger and bigger volume, bigger and bigger number of dealerships. And we have the entire gamut here, right? Here we have this gentleman from Indus Motors who's probably, if he were a manufacturer, probably he'd be ranking 6th or 7th in the industry. So scale is there, and there are enough examples. But there are certain preconditions to achieving scale. First is, of course, to have the aspiration. The second is, of course, performance from an OEM's perspective. If you look at it, and it is in some ways tied up to the second point that you mentioned, from an OEM's perspective, who are expanding their network, we always have a choice of going to your existing partner or selecting a new partner. And our view has always been that a known devil is better than an unknown one, frankly. Yet, because of certain other reasons, we continue to have a balance of expansion, and I'll come to that later. So performance is the key to achieving scale. And the other part is transparency. You again spoke about the P&L account, and we have very similar dealers of similar volume of sales, similar volume of service, similar age in similar cities, and the monthly revenue and expenses that we collect is huge variation, and for no apparent reason. I won't say no apparent reason. There are several reasons. One is, of course, performance itself. Are they focusing on all the revenue sources? Do they have good manpower? Incidentally, our more profitable dealers spend at least 10% more per manpower on salaries and incentives. Management. And there are so many aspects of management. One is, I'll just take one example, just inventory management. Profitable and loss-making dealers have similar inventory levels in terms of number of days or months. But churn, dead stock, these are all management issues. So, and of course, what is being shown on paper. So, that is yet another learning that we had when we went through these processes of PE taking substantial stake in our dealer partners. How clean is your balance sheet? How transparent it is? I think that played a very important role. And it also, and it is not from a PE perspective, it is from that relationship perspective as well. It is a very common, refrain that let's increase the margins. Okay, but what should we increase? How much should we increase? There is no clarity, because different, whether it's parts or labor rate or car margin or various other policies, they have different impacts on the bottom line, whether you call it a return on sales or return on capital employed. In order to take the right decision, so that we are able to, if there's a problem, we are able to fix, and so that there is enough return for the owner of the dealership or the investor, we need to have clarity and transparency, and unfortunately that's a challenge today. So that aspiration, transparency, performance, not only, and transparency, and another aspect that we saw was governance. So all these things are critical if PE funding is required. And PE funding, I think, eventually will lead to that scale. It's a virtuous cycle, actually. And there is, and I'll address your second question to again refer back to the first one. If it is a very owner-driven, I want to put it very crudely, where Malik tijori pe baitha hai khud, it is always risky from an OEM's perspective. So it is better to, just as dealers take several brands, right, to spread the risk. It is the same for an OEM. And that is why dealers sometimes or several times face this issue of, the growth getting blocked, because of the fact that OEMs think that in case something happens to this individual, then what will happen to my whole business in that geographical area. So PE in turn brings in more professional management, corporatization. So dependence on an individual reduces, and that in turn could possibly help in scaling up further.
Thank you, Mr. Sen, and I purposely kept the dealer margins out of our discussion, because that's a thaw which doesn't have various analysts, that there is a relationship between dealer margin and dealer owner, OEM dealer relationship, but there is no linear relationship. For example, Toyota was not doing too well 2 years back in terms of dealer profitability, but the surveys actually showed that the Toyota dealers were the most happy dealers, probably the best OEM dealer relationship ever had. So there is no relation between Dealer OEM relationship goes beyond money. It is a whole gamut of things which evolves out of the relationship. And this is a huge, very complex subject to be addressed in a 15-minute panel discussion, which we have already got over with. Coming out of the first two panelists who have spoken, my next question goes to Mr. Arun Malhotra. I'm keeping Umang out for the last, and because he'll add a lot of juice to this relationship. And so there is this thing about spreading out, and where Mr. Sen talked about dealers spreading it to brands to hedge the risks involved with a brand, and the manufacturers spreading it out to the number of dealers to hedge the risk in a particular geographical location. And I think both make sense. Your views on it, sir?
First to take, I mean, the relationship between the dealer and the manufacturer is a very interesting, very complex relationship. One side you can see the dealer as a customer also, because ultimately you have a final customer who is the actual who buys your vehicles, but there is a customer whom you sell vehicles to. Unless that customer is satisfied, he will not satisfy the final customer. The other is the partnership. How open the partnership is, how transparent the partnership is. And if you have trust and faith, you can do. To use a colorful Hindi term, ideally it should be like choli daman ka saath.
I knew it would come from you.
So the point is, how much value is added? Does the manufacturer see dealer as just an extension arm? Or the manufacturer sees that he can add value to the business? Is the dealer partners or the dealer clubs they form, are they one-way forum to disseminate some information, data, tell you have to do this, which is required, but is it also a forum to get inputs, get feedbacks, get suggestions, get ideas for strategies? That's the way a relationship will progress. Now, you know, if you talk to dealers, they say, in Hindi, they say, बड़े झंझट है इस business में, झंझट ही झंझट है. झंझट किस तरह की सर, कोई कस्टमर के झंझट, कभी कोर्ट के झंझट, कभी बैंकर के झंझट, कभी मैन्युफैक्चरर के झंझट, कभी कंप्यूटर के झंझट, कभी सेम कंपनी के अलग डीलर के झंझट. बट देन यू से व्हाई डू यू स्टिक टू दिस बिजनेस? सर इस बिजनेस का कुछ मजा ही अलग है, कुछ नशा ही अलग है. सो आई एम ट्राइंग ए कॉम्बिनेशन. इट्स द बेस्ट. इट्स लाइक चार्ल्स डिकेंस, द बेस्ट वर्ल्ड्स आर बोथ वर्ल्ड्स. I think what is required is, and when we're talking of growth, I think it makes eminent sense for the manufacturer, and at least I would personally do it. If there is a good partner, there is no reason why the manufacturer should not go in for expansion. Now the challenge only comes, should you expand him in the same city, or should you expand him in a geographical boundary? Gyaneshwar talked of Indus Motors. He's from, I think, right from Kasaragod to Kanyakumari edge, the entire Kerala, and then he's moved to some other states also. So my point is, there are opportunities. I think every manufacturer wants to give, and I would like to give people to expand. See, one side you have to professionalize, because you need returns, you need market share, you need customer satisfaction. But other side, there is a relationship also. Because in India, relationship and emotion bonding is an important part, a very important part. I think that is where we Indians are different from, say, probably Americans or Europeans. Do they value relationship? It can't be a my-baap syndrome. कि वो बाप है और वो आपके decide करेगा. He's maybe a big brother or a relationship. Do we value that relationship? I think that's an important part of this thing. See, opportunities in India are enough. And the one factor which I found common, I mean, through my experience, you know, whichever dealer groups have grown, there's one commonality to them, and that is HR practices. Because we are still a manpower intensive industry. We are not an automation industry. We are a manpower intensive industry.
And hopefully we continue to be that.
We continue to be that.
That's a you.
Okay. The dealerships which have closed down even, if you see their common link, it was total disregard for manpower. So there are common linkages there. And I think what is important is how we add value to each. Manufacturer can add value to dealer, and dealer can add value to manufacturer. I think there is something called emotional bonding. I still remember one of the father figures of the industry, Brijmohan Munjal. I still believe he was exemplary. One of the reasons why Hero Honda has grown, Hero MotoCorp has grown to one of the biggest groups today is his personal touch with his dealers. His dealers were like family members. So, but you can't just be family members and not perform. So you need a family member perform. So that's the sort of thing which is there. So it has to go hand in hand. So a good dealer would be, does he care for customers? In terms of, does he have the growth ability to grow markets? Does he have the ability to satisfy customers? And does he have the ability to meet the company's objectives which are there? And similarly for manufacturers. So it's a combination of factors. I can't put it in a formula like a parallelogram forces. So there are pressures, there are challenges, but I believe we still have a lot to do. And a lot of, I think what has happened is there's too much culture of emails, directions. There's sometimes the personal connect sometimes is important. And personal connect doesn't mean just meeting face to face. Today you have video conferencing, you can talk on phone. That's something which shouldn't get diluted. So that's my perspective, the way I see the industry.
So great. I think we are getting a lot of perspectives. So before I come to Umang, one more question which would go to probably both Janeshwar and Arun is that Arun touched upon a point where he talked of dealers being the first customers of an OEM. And we've often seen the lengths to which an OEM invests in a customer relationship, which is to do with an SSI survey or a CSI survey. And we have similar studies which are done by a number of agencies, and I would not like to name any of the agencies, which get into a dealer-manufacturer relationships and the reason for their being where they are. Two questions. One, how important is it for a manufacturer to look at studies like the dealer satisfaction surveys? And two, are these agencies the right agencies to be conducting a dealer satisfaction survey?
I would look at it a little differently. Dealer satisfaction is the cornerstone of this relationship. But it is not for the sake of satisfaction. It is for the sake of various hard and soft reasons. First hard reason is, of course, performance. From a manufacturer's perspective. From the dealer's perspective, returns or profits, right? And number two, of course, then there are so many other aspects, okay? Operational efficiencies, those surveys that you spoke about, they list them down, but those are fairly rational in nature. Mr. Malhotra spoke about so many emotional aspects. I don't think they captured that very well. Now talking about third-party surveys, I think if the OEM has no idea of its dealer satisfaction, then I think we are not doing our job. Frankly, we are all professionals working for an organization. And in so many ways, we are in daily touch, right? I visit about 50 dealers a year. And so are almost all my colleagues. And if at the end of the day, we don't know where we stand based on all these hundreds of interactions, then I think there's something wrong with us. So we know where we stand, but every company has, of course, every demand cannot be met. And because of so many reasons.
Now, adding a different dimension to a dealer-OEM relationship, and that's where Umang comes in. As an e-commerce site who is interacting both at the dealer level and at the OEM level, what could an e-commerce site contribute to this relationship?
So, I think to address that specific thing, the only people who should see us as competition is actually media. What's happening is consumers were earlier reading newspapers or reading magazines and getting an opinion of what car they want to buy. And there was a huge unmet consumer need in terms of getting a lot more information, understanding and researching their car better, understanding what other users are saying. We are a media, and if anything, no OEM is going to say I'm going to increase my marketing budget, or a dealer shift of that spend from relatively unprofitable offline channels or other channels towards the digital media. Are we going to eat into the space of a dealer? Absolutely not. we can't actually sell cars. Nowhere in the world do customers buy cars online. Ultimately, it is the whole, not just the selling experience, but the whole ownership experience of that car is completely delivered and controlled by the dealer partner and the entire ecosystem around that. And that's a huge element. Just to comment on the other piece, right, the whole OEM dealer relationship. So as a neutral third party for whom both are customers, right, OEMs are customers and dealers are customers, I actually think that sometimes we try to find a one size fits all issue. Dealer profitability is an issue in pockets. I see a lot of dealers who are very profitable and doing extremely well, and there are cases in specific cities with specific OEMs where there are concerns on profitability. And if anything, I've actually seen OEMs actively address it. A lot of the times, when a mass of dealers are facing a particular issue, OEMs invariably react and help out. But a lot of it comes down to cultural things. The progressive dealers where there's a culture, so whether it manifests in the form of better HR practices, whether it manifests in the form of being more professional, I think the more progressive dealers are doing well.
I think what we have definitely concluded is that dealer OEM relationship is an ongoing relationship. We are on the same side of the table and we are not on two sides of the table. And it is an extremely complex relationship, in a relationship where probably the methods are different, but the goal is the same. The goal is the same in terms of customer acquisition, customer retention, and ultimately making money for the dealership and making money for an OEM. So if the goals are the same and the route, and while I will not say profitability is not a point in question, but profitability as a measurement of dealer satisfaction comes way, way below various other aspects of dealer OEM relationship. So I think with this I close the discussion and throw this open to a QA session.
My name is Himanshu. I just wanted some more color, some views from the panelists on a slightly different subject. In countries like US, we have seen multi-brand dealerships, whereas that model is not in India. Over a more longer period of time, over say next 5 to 10 years, is that something which can come in India, or which it may or it may not, and the reasons?
So any one of Mr. Malhotra or Mr. Janeshwar Singh?
A lot has been talked on multi-brand, but even if you look at US over the years, that model hasn't grown. What has clearly grown is, and which is happening in India, a group has business verticals, have different businesses, but they don't come under the same roof, because each brand, in terms of its products, in terms of services, in terms of its images, stands for certain values. So you cannot combine those values, and that's something experience in US also has come. But what clearly is coming is multi-dealerships, and these are groups which are able to professionalize and which are able to create organizations, verticals, and they're doing well.
We have been talking about dealer profitability in generic terms, but you as OE manufacturers, what is the percentage of ROI you expect the dealers to make?
A medium to large size dealer, they typically talk in terms of ROS, okay, not on ROI or ROCE. With 2%, they're pretty happy. And for smaller dealerships, ROS of about 2.5 to 3 they're quite happy. That's our understanding, and Mr. Sanghi, correct me if I'm wrong.
Thank you for a brilliant discussion. Big applause for all of them, please.